Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a technique that is honestly one of the most powerful, yet totally invisible, analytical tools in modern electrochemistry. It's this hidden diagnostic powerhouse that's quietly working to optimize everything from the battery inside your smartphone all the way to cutting-edge biosensors used in modern medicine. We are talking about electrochemical impedance spectroscopy, or EIS. So, let's embark on an investigator's journey together and uncover how this all actually works. Let's get right to it.
To really get a feel for how this complex technique works, I want you to picture this. You're a detective. But your crime scene isn't a typical room. It's an electrochemical cell. It's this microscopic, sealed-off world that is in constant chaotic motion. And here's the catch. You can't just crack it open to look inside, because doing that destroys the very environment you were trying to study. Plus, the clues we're hunting for, they aren't physical fingerprints or footprints left in the mud. They are electrical signals. We're literally tracking how voltage and current interact over time to reveal the hidden mechanics of this microscopic world. Section 1. The Electrochemical Detective. To solve this case, let's first look at the analytical tools we have at our disposal and why our traditional, old-school methods completely fall short when things get complicated.
Let's dive in by comparing two really fundamental concepts. We all know standard DC, or direct current resistance, from Ohm's law, right? It's simple, it doesn't care about frequency, and it assumes perfectly ideal conditions. Think of DC resistance like just pushing continuously against the solid wall to see if it moves. But we know the real world is messy. Real-world electrochemical systems exhibit incredibly complex behaviors that force us to abandon that simple concept. Instead, we have to measure impedance. Impedance is a broader measure of resistance, but it uses AC, or alternating current. So going back to our analogy, if DC is pushing constantly against the wall, AC impedance is like tapping that wall at a bunch of different speeds and carefully listening to how it vibrates back. It is a highly frequency-dependent measurement, and it tells us way more about what's actually inside the wall.
Section 2. Probing with AC signals. Now that we know we're hunting for impedance rather than just basic resistance, we need a way to safely interrogate our suspect without destroying the evidence inside the cell.
Here is the thing. Electrochemical cells are inherently nonlinear. Meaning, if you double the voltage, you absolutely will not just magically double the current. The response curve is completely wild and unpredictable. But we have a really clever trick up our sleeve. We apply a tiny oscillating AC voltage signal, usually just 1 to 10 millivolts. By keeping the signal that incredibly small, we're only looking at a microscopic portion of the cell's total current voltage curve. It's kind of like the Earth. From space, it's obviously a curved, nonlinear sphere. But if you only look at a tiny 10-foot stretch of a grassy field, which is our 10 millivolt signal, it looks perfectly flat. We call this being pseudolinear. This tiny signal lets us gather our electrical clues non-destructively without triggering some massive system-altering response that would ruin our crime scene.
The actual methodology for this delicate interrogation basically boils down to 3 steps. First, our instrument, which is called a potentiostat, applies that small sinusoidal potential excitation. Put simply, we give the system a gentle, wave-like voltage push. Second, we measure the resulting AC current response. Because the cell has complex internal structures, the current responds as a wave at the exact same frequency, but it's going to be slightly delayed. We call this a phase-shifted response. It's sort of like shouting into a canyon and waiting for the echo to return just a little bit out of sync. And finally, third, we calculate the system's overall complex impedance, using the ratio between that original voltage wave and the delayed current echo.
Now, dealing with waves and delays gets mathematically messy very quickly, so our detective needs a decoder ring. In electrochemistry, that decoder ring is a mathematical translation tool called Euler's relationship. This formula is brilliant. It lets us convert those raw, phase-shifted oscillating signals into a single complex function. So suddenly, our impedance is represented as a complex number made of 2 distinct parts, a real part and an imaginary part. And hey, imaginary doesn't mean it's fake. In physics, the real part is your direct, straightforward resistance, while the imaginary part represents stored energy and those out-of-sync delayed responses. Using Euler's relationship, we've successfully translated raw electrical echoes into usable, distinct clues.
Section 3. Decoding Nyquist and Bode. With our raw data mathematically translated into real and imaginary parts, it's time to pin the evidence up on our clue board so we can visually reconstruct the crime scene. We actually translate our decoded clues into 2 main visual maps. First up, we have the Nyquist plot. This plots the real impedance on the x-axis against the negative imaginary impedance on the y-axis. This map is absolutely fantastic for identifying overarching shapes, specifically semicircles that represent distinct reactions and time constants happening inside the cell. Then we have the Bode plot, which serves a totally different purpose. It's great for analyzing the explicit frequency-dependent behavior of the system. It plots the data out linearly so we can see exactly how the cell responds as we change the speed of our interrogation.
Let's look a little closer at the Nyquist plot. While it is incredibly popular and great for seeing the big picture and overall geometric patterns, it has one major shortcoming. Going back to our detective metaphor, the Nyquist plot is basically like finding a perfectly preserved footprint from your prime suspect. You know exactly what shoe they wear, but the plot gives you absolutely zero idea when the footprint was left at the scene. The frequency data, which is the critical time component of our interrogation, is completely hidden. Looking at any single data point on that curve just won't tell you what frequency was used to record it. Though, as a general rule of thumb, points on the lower left usually correspond to the highest, fastest frequencies.
So, to solve this missing time mystery, we flip over to our second map, the Bode plot. Here, the logarithmic frequency is explicitly plotted on the x-axis against both the impedance magnitude and the phase angle on the y-axis. If the Nyquist plot is the physical footprint, the Bode plot is our interrogation timeline. It gives us back our temporal clues. This explicit plotting lets us instantly pinpoint exactly how the system behaves at very specific frequencies, beautifully filling in the crucial gaps left behind by the Nyquist plot.
Section 4. Building equivalent circuits. Okay, we have our visual evidence mapped out, but to actually solve the case, we have to match these plotted clues back to the physical realities happening inside the cell. We do this by building what are called equivalent circuit models. We're essentially making highly educated guesses to simulate the cell using classical electrical components to represent actual physical phenomena. For example, a basic resistor can model solution resistance, which is just how hard it is for current to move through the liquid electrolyte. Another resistor might model charge transfer kinetics, the actual chemical reaction happening right at the surface. We use a capacitor to model double-layer capacitance. That's this fascinating phenomenon right at the boundary where the metal electrode touches the liquid, storing energy just like a tiny physical capacitor. We can even model the sluggish diffusion layer, which tracks how slowly ions literally swim through the chemical goop to reach the surface.
The true detective work here is how we arrange these components. By placing elements into logical series and parallel combinations, we create models like the famous simplified Randall circuit. But why do we even care about parallel versus series? Think of it like water flowing through pipes. If current has two paths it can take, which is a parallel circuit, it's going to split between the easy path and the difficult path. By setting our models up this way, we can mathematically deconvolute or untangle the total current. It lets us isolate the exact source of a bottleneck. We can definitively point and say, the resistance isn't from the liquid itself, it's from a degraded boundary layer on the electrode. We physically separate the internal structures to understand exactly what's contributing to the total impedance.
Section 5. The power of time. This ability to mathematically untangle the cell brings us to the ultimate reason why ESI is considered the most powerful magnifying glass in electrochemistry. Let's pull all of these concepts together. In traditional DC voltammetry, all the processes happen at once, and they all contribute to the total current, which makes it almost impossible to tell them apart. It's honestly like trying to listen to 100 people shouting in a room at the exact same time. But EIS has a superpower. It probes distinct processes on distinct timescales simultaneously. Because we're sweeping through different AC frequencies, we can easily distinguish the lightning-fast microsecond reactions, like surface charging, from the much slower, hundreds of millisecond processes, like heavy ions slowly slogging their way through a dense electrolyte. High frequencies catch the fast events, low frequencies catch the slow ones.
And let me tell you, this time-separating superpower has massive, high-stakes, real-world applications. Take tracking battery degradation, for example. By separating out those resistive and capacitive contributions over time, engineers can actively map out the intricate dance of ions and electrons inside a live cell. They can track a pristine battery, compare it to an over-discharged one, or even a dangerously swollen, overcharged one. This isn't just some academic exercise. This non-destructive mapping is exactly how engineers figure out how to design electric vehicle batteries that last for decades, safely and reliably, instead of degrading and failing after just a few months on the road.
It really is incredible how a tiny, oscillating voltage acts as a master key, unlocking the most complex secrets of a microscopic world. So, as you think about the electronic devices surrounding you right now, from the fast-charging battery in your smartphone to complex, life-saving sensors in medical devices, consider this. How will this invisible, entirely non-destructive interrogation technique continue to quietly work behind the scenes, diagnosing the unseen and optimizing the vital technology of tomorrow? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I hope you learned something fascinating today.